This is Your Other Brothers Podcast.
It's like running through an open door. It's like finding what you're looking for. We've been waiting. We won't wait no more. We got a beautiful story. Every moment on and on. We got a beautiful story. And we've only just begun. The best is yet to come.
Welcome home, friends, to Your Other Brothers Podcast. We are a community navigating faith, homosexuality, and masculinity together. From the Jewel of the Blue Ridge, my name is Tom. I'm so glad you all are here, whoever you are, wherever you are. Joining me today from the other side of North Carolina, I hardly ever say where we are. The other side of North Carolina, it's our other brother. I'm sorry, from the city of Oaks. It's our other brother, Ryan. What's up, Ryan?
Hey Tom, good to be back.
Good to be back, you guys. Back-to-back episodes, because also here with us from the folksy tundra, it's our other brother, Aaron. What's up, Aaron?
Hello. Yeah, back to back. It's only been like a week and a half since we last recorded.
And before that, like 6 months or whatever.
Yeah, right.
A little bit of we're out of our Enneagram slumber now. We have awoken from the Enneagram coma that we were all entrenched in. We are officially full steam ahead with the YOBcast once again. Episode 98 today. We are talking about Side B resources. And just like our last two episodes, this is a two-parter. We're going to do something very similar to what we did these last two episodes, which is talk to Ryan and Aaron about some Side B resources they've stumbled across in their many years. And then also talking with the other guys on our podcast crew in our next episode to get their side of the story. Because we all know the pastors, they have some deep pulls. It's so funny when I texted this idea to Will and Ben, I got a text back from Will with a picture of like some book with like 17 words on the cover. I have no idea what he sent me. And I think he was joking, but I think he was also kind of serious that this was a Side B resource in his life. So maybe he'll talk about that like 17 word title book in our next episode. You guys just got to stay tuned. We'll see. Will has the books though.
His first Side B resource would be some like theological tome.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
A tome. Yes, that is exactly what it was. And it had like, you guys can picture the cover too, like this brown, musty cover with like the gold lettering. That's what he sent me. So we'll see. We'll see if he cracks that thing open in our next episode. No pressure to Ryan and Aaron to bring any tomes to our conversation here today. We'll see what they bring. But this is the way we're going to talk about it today. Is we're going to talk about some of the first resources we stumbled across when we first realized that this Side B thing, or whatever language we would have used at the time, that this journey that we're on now was a possibility, was something other people were doing. We're going to talk about like kind of our first forays into finding resources on the internet. I guess it doesn't have to be on the internet. Maybe you went to your local library and found something. I don't know. Possibly. But, and then we're just going to talk about some of our favorite resources which have emerged over the years. So that's what we're going to talk about in these two episodes. This is a topic rather, that our community's been looking for a while. Like we have a resources tab on our website, which is a thing. If you go to yourotherbrothers.com/resources, there's some books, some ministries, podcasts. We also have, something that's a new development is all of our book club books. There's a whole listing of all the books we've read over the last couple of years. That's on our resources tab as well. All pertaining in some way to this journey with faith, with sexuality, with masculinity, not necessarily endorsed by like everyone involved with Yob. It definitely, our book clubs, as Ryan knows, has led to some spirited discussions sometimes people not as thrilled or not as excited about certain books or certain authors, but we've still had great conversations nonetheless. So you guys can check that out. If you just want to see what we've been reading, because our book clubs have been chugging along now for 2 years. So we've been reading lots of books. But yeah, I put it out to the Yobbers. I was like, what resources have mattered to you? And I gave them a list. Like, is there a blog out there? Are there books? Are there podcasts? Are there videos? Are there comic books? I tried to like think about all the possible outlets of resources out there. So we'll see what the Yobbers have to say, because they have some feedback to offer as well. But yeah, we'll be talking about resources here today. Sticking with the Yobbers though, before we get there, something has recently developed on our Discord. I don't know if either of you have seen it, but this is something I want to do more often, because this just flows so well. Rather than me just coming up with some random topic to talk about, sometimes the Yobbers do like the job for me. They do all the work for me. This is why they exist. This is why they're here. They create the content for me, because I don't know how it started or what prompted it exactly. I forget. But like over the last couple of days, they have been posting pictures of themselves like from yesteryear or yesterdecade in some certain situations. And I think it started with like different hairstyles and haircuts. I think that was the focus of it at first. And then it kind of evolved to childhood photos, or just like glamour shots. And now everybody just post the best pictures of yourself. So there's been a little bit of a picture palooza on our Yobbers Discord the last couple of days. But what the discussion prompted was like, I was looking at these pictures and they're so precious, you guys, like severe bold cuts and long hair down to the shoulders and all sorts of, just interesting hairstyles. I offered up my own from my freshman year of college when my hair was down to my shoulders. And it prompted the question, because Ryan, you have the hair. And so I feel like your hair is in the room. We need to honor the hair. And I was going to ask you guys, like, what's the crazy, have you done anything crazy with your hair? Or have you grown it out? Like for me, like when I was telling them on Discord, after like 6 years of Christian education where everything had to be super neat and no facial hair, even the teachers and administrators, like no facial hair and neat haircuts, nothing dangling off of your neck. After that, I was like, and I wasn't the only one, like all of my male classmates, I saw it on Facebook, like everybody grew out their hair because it was just, we were free from the tyranny of Christian education. I don't know how other Christian schools do it, but that's how ours did it. And so for like, I think at least a year and a half, it might've been closer to 2 years, I grew out my hair and didn't cut it. And it was horrendous. It was horrific. It got so bushy and long. And my mother was a happy person when I went to the barber and got that cleaned up afterward. But it made me curious because I've only ever seen you guys kind of like you are now. I don't think I've seen either of you with hair too different from what it looks like now. So has it been different in the past? I'm so curious.
Yeah, to tell the full story of my hair journey would require its own multi-part podcast series, but I'll give you the quick answer, which is that it has not always looked like this. Growing up, I didn't really have like a bowl cut, but it was just it was a little more tapered than a bowl cut, but definitely just letting it lie flat, and my hair is very fine and doesn't have any wave to it whatsoever. So I didn't know what to do with it. And it wasn't until, well into my adult life, probably my mid to late 20s, when I figured out what to do with it. And that is to, well, that's not your question. The question has it been crazy before? And yes, I relate to the cringeworthy, looking at my other pictures, my older pictures, and being like, yikes! I'm so glad I finally figured out what to do with my hair. My only other sidebar to that story is that I did go through a mohawk phase in college.
No.
So two Octobers in college, I declared it Hawktober, and I got a mohawk for two of those.
You know, that is so great. I'm so glad. Thank you for your vulnerability, because I just pictured you coming out of the womb with hair like that. But you've had a journey.
Perfect.
You've had a journey with your hair.
Well, I don't have many pictures of myself straight out of the womb, so I'm not really sure.
Sure.
And I'm sure those pictures are coming, Ryan.
I've destroyed as many as I can.
No, Ryan, the people.
No, when I was young, I mean, on a serious note, when I was young, I really disliked I disliked what I looked like. And so I avoided pictures for a lot of my life. And so there just aren't that many pictures from that.
Yeah, no, I can relate.
Yeah.
I can relate as well. What about you, Aaron? What have you done with your hair over the years?
Yeah, my hair actually used to be very long and very curly.
Oh.
It
No way.
like ringlets, like a fro.
Oh my gosh.
Actually through high school and most of college, I had really poofy long
No
hair
way.
that was
Oh, no.
super curled.
Oh my gosh.
Like, it was
I need to tell the listeners because they can't see you. Like your hair is so short. It's like so close
it's
to
very
your scalp.
short
Yeah.
and it's
So short and tame and conservative.
and slowly receding.
So
It's just-
Minnesota.
Yeah, well, the truth is, like, as I got older and older, I felt like I had to eventually adopt a more professional hairstyle.
Oh no.
Um,
The American
because of
dream
the
has
work that I
captured
do.
you.
It has. It's eroded who I am, like, intrinsically inside of my being. But I looked on Facebook, that's what I've been doing here, to find some photos of my curly hair.
Praise the Lord.
And they're not like, they're old photos. So when you zoom in, they don't look super clear. But this is one,
Oh my
I
gosh.
love
the
it.
curly hair.
Curly haired Aaron covering your ears. It's just like a mop,
yeah.
a mop on your head. That is precious.
Yeah, but that haircut, I'm not going to let it manage my 401k. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Exactly.
So it's probably a good call.
Yeah.
It was good for the times, and I'll tell you, it was easy. And that's just my natural hair. Here is half straightened.
Whoa.
gosh.
That is
So
insane.
it was like when you straightened it, it went almost down to my chin. It was long for how short it looks with the curl. But
Wow.
the
there you go.
listeners are freaking out right now after what they just heard.
I know after what they just saw with their
Curly
ears,
on one side,
yeah,
straight on the other side. It was a magnificent picture you just showed. It was
I'm sure
so
it
great.
was something.
This is like emotional for me. Surprise, surprise. Everything's emotional. But like looking at those pictures of you, and then just seeing pictures of these people that I've come to know over the last year, 2, 5 years, whatever. Like there's something in me that feels a sense of longing. Like, oh, I want to know that person. I want to know like what was it like to be their friend and to hang out, when they were in 8th grade or 12th grade or first year of college or, whatever. Like I just like find myself with a sense of longing when I see some of these pictures because I just want to connect with you guys across all eras of time, I love that. Thank you for sharing your hair stories. I would love to hear the hair stories, and pictures work great on the blog, you guys. I don't know if you know this, but you can post pictures on our blog if you go to the comments section. So if you feel so inclined, putting cringeworthy photos of yourself on the internet, go to our blog. Do it. Just do it. Don't think about it. We would love to go down memory lane with you. And I would love to just have a sense of longing that I wish I could connect with that person. All right. And I look forward to the day when Yob is still around 20 years from now and we're in our 50s and 60s, that we can reflect back on these times when our hair looked like it did now. And probably it's cringeworthy because in the future, our hair is doing something completely different. So who knows? I'm excited to cross that bridge with all of you. Moving into some announcements for those that have forgotten or for those that are unaware. If you want to rate and review our show on Apple Podcasts, I just checked. We're up to 131 ratings and reviews. So fun. Thank you guys for all that have done that. Let's get to 150. Let's get to 150 by, what's a reasonable goal? I don't know. Probably not going to happen this year. That's probably too fast. But by some point in the semi-near future, to keep it super vague, let's get to 150 ratings and reviews. Just go to Apple Podcast and rate and review our show. We would love to hear what you have to say. I forget if I mentioned it on the air because we've done so many reviews on the air and everything. And I know I haven't read every single one. I don't think I have. I might have missed one or two. But like I was reflecting on a critical review because I was just checking to see like what's out there. I haven't checked the old ratings and reviews in a while. And I was going back down memory lane at a critical review where someone was critical of our quote unquote fake sponsorships. I was taken aback, you guys. I was like, fake sponsorships?
Of all the things,
No
I
kidding.
have my critiques, but that's not one of them.
I was like, wow, okay. those people that have put in so much finances into sponsoring our show, I'm sure they are offended right now that they have been called a fake sponsorship. But it was fair. It was a fair review. He's not a fan. He's not a fan of the fake sponsorships, but that's okay. I honestly do. I appreciate him taking the time to give us his thoughts, his or her thoughts, whoever it was, on our show. So you can too. If you hate our fake sponsorships or if you love them, please leave us a rating and review. You guys, our 100th YOBcast is coming soon, and we want your help. We strongly desire your help. We're looking for some 30-second or less voicemails from you guys about why has this show mattered to you? Why are you still here after 100 episodes now? Many of you have listened to all of them, or a majority of them at this point, and you keep coming back. And the question is why? Why do you keep coming back? Why are you still here? That is the question I would love to explore in the form of a voicemail. So if you go to our voicemail, 706-389-8009, you'll hear my little voice giving you some instructions and introducing you to what's about to happen. But if you leave a 30-second or less call, that would be so great. If you want to tell us why you love this show, or points of criticism, if you want to go there, or favorite moments, memories, quotes, topics that we've done and explored, like what's your favorite episodes maybe that you've done, all of that is up for grabs. I would love to hear from as many of you guys as possible leading up to our 100th episode, because I would love to do a segment on our 100th episode where we just play some voicemails from our dear listeners. So if you've called before, you are welcome to call again. And if you've never called before, if you're a Yobline virgin, now's the time. Now's the time to lose your virginity. Let's do it. Let's do it right now. If not now for the 100th episode celebration, then when? You know?
You're making it sound like phone sex.
Call the Yobline, hear my voice.
Please do not call with your phone sex.
This is why we have negative reviews, Tom.
Please do not leave me a sexual voicemail. I will delete it. I will not play it. And we'll go from there. But yeah, it's so exciting. We're getting closer and closer to our 100th episode. As for the sponsor, because we're talking about Side B resources, and I was like, telling the Yobbers, give us your books, give us your blogs, give us your, whatever. Cassette tapes. Give us your cassette tapes. Listen to Side A. So here's the deal. This 2-part series is sponsored by cassette tapes. Today's episode is sponsored by Side A. No affiliation with the Side A theology. And then next episode is sponsored by the flip side, Side B of the cassette tapes. So thank you, cassette tapes. Did you guys jam out to some cassette tapes growing up?
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I had.
We did have them, yeah.
I had the Spice Girls' first album on cassette tape.
So nice. I can remember jamming out to like Michael W. Smith or something, so Christian, or like Amy Grant or something. I don't know. Like I remember that, popping that into the parents' cassette player. And it was a revolutionary day when the cassette player got replaced by this like big fancy rotating, you could put like 3 CDs inside and it would like rotate.
Yeah, I remember those.
It's like, what is this? What is this magic from the future? Yeah, that was a big day.
I think cassettes should make a comeback.
Yeah.
I think they're trying to, since they sponsored our show.
I think so. I think that's the motive, because they know we get the big hits, the big listens here. So
that's right. That's right.
This is the one. This is the one to broadcast. So thank you, cassette tapes, for giving us the resources for this episode on Side B resources. I'm really curious to go into this topic now with you guys about, what was kind of your first foray into when I first started figuring out there were stories and other people trying to live like I wanted to live, like Side B, that wasn't a phrase or terminology that would come until years later. I'm not sure when. So I'm curious if that's the same for you guys, or if you, like what you guys encountered, like what was your first awareness, that you weren't as alone as you thought you were, that there was help, that there was, encouragement to be found out there.
Yeah, for myself, it was there were a variety of resources I found fairly close to each other, and some of them were just about sexuality in general, and some were more Side B and actually helpful maybe to my theology and faith navigation through sexuality. As cringy as it makes me feel thinking about this, but like my first foray into exploring my own sexuality was just going to YouTube and like Googling people who were gay talking about their sexuality and like particularly Christian theology that went with it. And then I'd go and I'd post my little like posts just talking to people about theology and like arguing over whether homosexuality was a sin or not and all that good stuff. And I just think back to little Aaron like processing his own sexuality unconsciously through debating other people theologically on the topic.
Interesting. So how old were you when you started YouTubing, when you started looking on YouTube rather?
Oh, I don't know. I might have been in my early teens.
That's right, because I remember you talking about like what episode was that? You were like talking about.
Oh yeah. I don't remember what episode that was.
That was fairly recently. Adept listeners, they're shouting it out. They know when you shared about that.
They know. Yeah, that's right. They keep better tabs.
Because I was like, I was in college when I started figuring out this stuff, and then you were in, like middle school or early high school. Or
honestly,
something.
That was probably middle school when I was starting to do that.
Wow.
But like I was not aware of my own sexuality really at that point, not fully. But then as I got into high school, there was a resource that my church had. They didn't really have, well, this was the only resource they had that related in any way to sexuality. And it was about a lesbian woman who became a Christian and then was like saved from her homosexuality and became straight. And not to diminish those, Sadek stories, but it wasn't particularly helpful for me because I wasn't.
Because you're not a lesbian. So how is that going to help you?
Yeah, exactly. And like, I don't know. I was like wondering, does this mean I need to have my big conversion story still and like come to terms with becoming a Christian? And then at that point I would like be saved from my sexuality. But no, I was a Christian and that was tough. But the first time I encountered something closer to, I don't know, helpful Christian theology relating to my sexuality was Christopher Yuan actually came and spoke in one of our chapel services on my campus. And, I wouldn't say he's side B, but he aligns fairly closely to a lot of our theology. And that was kind of the gateway for me thinking about my sexuality in terms of like finding a way for me as a Christian to experience same-sex attraction and have that somehow be compatible in one individual human. So rather than feeling like I had to purge the sexuality out to exist as Christian Aaron, he kind of opened me up to this idea of, having that salvation story, that conversion story, but maybe not experiencing like a radical change in his sexuality.
Did you, after hearing Christopher Yuan speak, did you like reach out to him either in person or like send him an email or anything? Or did you just attend, hear what he had to say and go
I just listened to what he had to say, but that kind of kicked off reading a lot of material. So then I read his book, which was very good.
Out of a Far Country, which is an upcoming book club entry with our community. Excited to talk about that.
Definitely a recommended read.
Okay, yeah.
So, and then that led me to my final resource that I'll share, which was the book Torn
yes.
by Justin Lee. I believe that's his name.
Also, a recent YOBers book club entry from a few months ago. So look at you.
That's right. Yeah, having read these books but not going
unintentionally supporting the book club.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure whatever thoughts you would have offered would have been great. Would have been, I'm sure, super smart.
We'll never really know. Yeah. And that one introduced me to some of this terminology of like side A and B. Mm-hmm. So even though I didn't necessarily, I don't know, wasn't sure where I was at with my sexuality at that point, it was helpful just to get an introduction that way.
Torn's a good one. Like, I recommend it if you just want to know what the side A perspective is. I think Justin does a good job. We just discussed it in our book club, and it was a great discussion, even though we disagree with conclusions. Like, he tells his story throughout much of it, and it's a beautiful thing when you learn somebody's story and learn more of where they're coming from. And so that's a great little cross section between Christopher Yuan and Justin Lee. Look at you.
Yeah.
What about you, Ryan? What got you started on this journey?
Yeah, I remember the first resources that were ever sort of given to me indirectly. This is a speaker at a conference, sort of had a little sidebar that there's such thing as a Christian who struggles with same-sex attraction, and if you're and they have decided to follow Jesus in spite of their same-sex attractions, and if you're one of those people, or if you want to know more, here are some resources. And he gave a link to Exodus International, which is not a Side B resource. He gave a link to a website called becomingreal.com, which is what I settled on as more helpful than Exodus as I looked at this stuff. And I remember this is in college. This is my sophomore year of college. No, freshman year of college. I remember this was January, and my roommate in my dorm room was like home for the weekend. And I remember like furtively like closing my dorm room door and like locking it and firing up like private mode in Firefox.
Ooh, as if I was
gonna look at porn, but no, I was looking at resources for
he's just on the Exodus International website.
Yeah, I know. So this website, becomingreal.com, I just now looked it up, and it's no longer exists.
Oh, I was gonna look it up too. I've never heard of that one. What was it?
It was, I guess, it was probably like Side Y, but it was the first thing that I read that suggested that maybe I didn't have to work toward changing my orientation. It suggested that, it said, if you want to pursue orientation change, you can, but it's actually pretty unusual and unlikely. That's not to say God can't or won't do it, but it's not most people's experience, and it's okay not to pursue it. And there are lots of other people who don't pursue it, and they're still faithful to Jesus. But I think in terms of overall message, I would say it was less Side B and more Side Y, I would guess. I think my first real Side B resource, I can't remember whether Washed and Waiting from Wesley Hill came first, or if it was Spiritual Friendship, the blog website. He wrote for both, and I heard about Wesley Hill through one of my pastors at church, a fellow named Nick. We were talking about questions of sexuality and how do I reconcile my faith and sexuality, and he recommended Wesley Hill. And I was just thinking about that today, like as I was reflecting and preparing my thoughts for this episode. I was thinking, wow, how incredibly fortunate it was that Nick had heard of like these resources. I mean, he's ostensibly straight, as far as I know.
Ostensibly.
Yeah, I say that it makes it sound like he's like super macho, but he was very gentle and tender, which is why I trusted him. And I remember at the time I was very standoffish toward resources. Like I had this sense that like, oh, the internet, there's no authority to say this is a good resource, this is a bad resource. Like I don't want to go and find something that leads me astray, I think was the fear there. And so to have this pastor recommend something online in this book helped me to start to kind of form my own discernment, form my own capability to read different things online and discern for myself, okay, do I want to follow where this is going, or do I think this is leading me astray? Yeah, and I remember Washed and Waiting, that was very frustrating for me to read the first time around. I think there was, I loved so much of Wesley Hill's vulnerability and so much of his honesty about, hey, this life kind of sucks. There's lots of suffering here. There's lots that sucks here. And there were parts that were really challenging to me and made me kind of angry. I remember throwing the book across the room at least once, although I was trying to remember what made me react that way, but I honestly can't remember. But I did.
I was going to say, we could read up that passage right now and see if it evokes like a twitch in the eye or something.
Yeah. But ultimately, that was formative to me. Wesley Hill's writing, formative to me in understanding my sexuality as more complex than just I'm struggling with same-sex attraction, more complex than I'm following Jesus in spite of it all. I think Wesley Hill helped me, and Spiritual Friendship helped me see that there are elements of my sexual orientation that are beautiful and good and God honoring, or at least elements that are like correlated with all that. So that was probably my first real side B resource.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad you brought up Watched and Waiting. I knew that would have to come up in this conversation. And one of our yobbers mentioned it as one of his favorite resources. I'll read it and then I'll share my experience with that and kind of catch up with my first forays into this world. The yobber says this about the book. This book was given to me by a counselor of an SSA group at my college. He was one of the first people that didn't view my sexuality as something abhorrent, and he showed so much compassion for my struggle. So this book will always be meaningful to me in that respect. It was also the first resource I had read that didn't view my same-sex attraction as some sort of unpardonable sin, and it gave me hope that I could be faithful even with such a burden. And I get the sense that from so many people, like in our age bracket, Watched and Waiting is one of, if not the first resource that was available, because it was like the first one. Like it was the first, like pretty much explicitly side B book that would have come out.
And I read it, this is a few years after college. So I remember as a college student, 19, 20 years old, having realized that I was gay and kind of come to terms with it. Well, come to terms with it is strong language, but sort of like acknowledged it. I remember wandering forlornly through the aisles of like Lifeway and wondering like where's I feel like this book, I need a certain book to exist, but it just doesn't, And finally, when I read Watched and Waiting, I realized, oh, this is the book I was like looking for at the time.
I remember many a forlorn walk through Lifeway. Those are the days. Those are the days when Lifeway, aren't they like out of business now?
They're gone. Yeah.
They're gone. Yeah.
R.I.P. Lifeway, not a sponsor of this episode. That would have been a funny sponsor though.
Zondervan.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm sure somebody would come hunting for us if this was sponsored by Zondervan or Lifeway. But I was late to the game. Like I didn't read Watched and Waiting for years after I knew it existed. I knew it was like this book that people were crazy about, and it was like the one. It was the first like side B book. So I knew it was something that I would eventually read. It just took me a few extra years. And I think I used like a roommate's copy. Like it took me living with somebody who had the book to then like allow me to pick it up and start reading it. And then I remember just being like, wow, like I've never read anything like this in book form. And it was pretty revolutionary for me as well, just to see that written down like so openly about his story. It was a cool moment to finally read it when I did. But something about us, because we're all fairly close in range. Aaron's a little younger. He's the baby of our team here, with his big poofy curly hair of yesteryear.
That's all right.
But yeah, like for me, like so we're all coming at it from a similar relationship with the internet. Because I was relating with what you were saying, Ryan, about like the internet as like, it was kind of new, like having like Wi-Fi. That was a new thing where my computer wasn't plugged into the wall somewhere into an Ethernet cable. Like this was kind of new to like be free range and start Googling things and starting to find stuff and see what's out there. Like it was kind of a new frontier. And so, I've told the story so many times now, but like finding a community of people blogging their life stories, like that to me was so revolutionary. It wasn't, a ministry page. It wasn't an organization. It wasn't a forum. It it wasn't even somebody's book or anything. It was just, you know, Joe over here and Chris over there, and, you know, all these people just blogging, most of them using aliases and just blogging about, at the time, a lot of the language at the time was struggling with same-sex attraction or struggling with homosexuality. And that was the content. And that was my first resource of like checking the box that I know I'm not alone. And that was such a pivotal moment for me to even start to grasp the fact that, okay, now that I know that I'm not alone, maybe there's more out there. Like what else is in these waters, the waters of the internet, you know? And so, you know, one thing kind of leads to the next, like word of mouth gets, you know, I learned from this blog community that a lot of those guys were involved at Exodus conferences. And so, you know, I was so gung ho. I was like jumping into this world and I was like, let's do it. I'm terrified. I'm scared to death, but I'm going to go to the next Exodus conference. And I booked my ticket to get there. And that's where I met a lot of my friends for the first time, that I made online, and just like being in that world and hearing people speak and going to workshops and hanging out with people. Like, you know, I wonder what it would be like to like see myself there again all these years later and probably disagree with a lot of things. But at the time it was just super helpful, just to be in an environment where there are other people like me. I think that was just the baseline, of being in a place where I know I'm not alone. And for the rest of my life, I don't have to ever wonder, am I the only Christian with a homosexual thought or homosexual activity on my computer? Like that's something that was super good for me to finally, to just like to cast out forever. Like I never had to worry about that ever again. And so, so from there, like finding spiritual friendships blog, that was another, part of those early steps into resources. I remember like finding it and thinking, okay, this is cool. The website could use like a decorator or like spice it up a little bit. Uh-huh. I think that website has stayed exactly the same. Like, have you guys seen that website any other way? Like, I think it's just been the standard, like white background, you know, clip art banner and blog roll list.
Beautiful content.
Yeah.
Really tough as far as the aesthetics go.
Yeah. I so badly want somebody to just like spend an hour on that website and like deck it out, make it 2022 in there and not 1995, you know. But God bless it. It's been a great resource for so many people, because there is a lot of good content on there.
And the good Lord help you if you're trying to view it on your phone.
Oof. Yeah. Don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it's mobile friendly. Yeah. Not sure about that. But Spiritual Friendship, that is a blog that, you know, a lot of the guys from my era, I don't know how much people frequent it these days, because I don't think it's as active anymore. But back in the day, like a decade ago, like that was the place. That was the place people were blogging, like Wesley Hill, and others. So yeah, gotta give a shout out to Spiritual Friendship, because it's definitely been part of the journey of finding places to belong. All right, you guys. So in our remaining time, I would love to hear from you guys and just listen and hear, and maybe share some of my own too. But favorite resources, are there any resources, either ones that you've already mentioned or other ones you've come across in recent years that are particularly meaningful or have blessed you in a particular specific way, depending on the season of your life that you're in, or I don't know, any specific content? If it's a book, like specific chapters or specific perspectives, like I would just love to hear from you guys.
I'm going to have to go with a resource from a friend of the show, Gregory Coles.
Oh, yes. We love Greg.
Yeah. His book, Single Gay Christian, I would say is the just best all around resource, best multi-purpose. I feel like you can give it to anyone and they'll be enlightened in some direction. You know, like you can give it to your straight friend, you can give it to your young nephew who just came out as gay, you can give it to a parent, you know, you could give it to a pastor. I mean, when I read it, I was pretty well developed in like kind of side B thinking, and it was helpful and insightful to me. He's insightful, he's funny, he's humble, he's thought-provoking. I think, you know, for a long time I would have said that Washed and Waiting was kind of the best all-around resource, but Gregory Coles has surpassed that, in my opinion.
Take that, Wesley Hill.
And I know, I don't know Wesley very well. I've met him exactly once, but I would guess that he would be delighted that somebody surpassed Watched and Waiting.
It's kind of like the Watched and Waiting of this generation, if that's like a comparison that can be made. I don't know. Like, I think Wesley Hill, he's just like a super smart guy. I think he's just a headier guy. And not to say Greg is not smart, because he's a doctor now and he's extremely smart, but his book is just so approachable, and I think it relates to a lot of people who, if you enjoy if you enjoy just like our story, our narrative based community, I think that's a no-brainer of a book. If you haven't read it, definitely recommend it.
It's excellent. Highly recommend it as well.
I had a friend send it to me in the mail. And this is what I do. Apparently, I just can't get the resource myself. I have to like read it off a roommate's shelf. This person sent it to me in the mail. And I'm so grateful he did, because I devoured it. I remember just reading it so fast. I normally am somebody who loves to like savor it, and like read a chapter a day and don't push through it. But I couldn't. I think I remember 2 days, maybe 3 days finishing that book. It's a fairly easy read, It's not long or anything. So I devoured it pretty quickly. It was so good.
Yeah, the other book that I really loved is People to Be Loved by Preston Sprinkle.
Yeah.
And what I like about his book is he does kind of dive in to try to tackle the theological discussion around the topic. But unlike most theologians or doctors who dive into the topic, he humanizes it in a way that is unique from most other resources. And he incorporates a lot of stories of LGBT people that he knows and things like that. So I really liked that as a resource as well. And then anything by Mark Yarhouse, I really liked also. Takes more of a social psychological approach to it. But it's just kind of a unique way to look at it. And I felt like he had a lot of good insight and did a good job of kind of explaining terminology. And he had some different books out that just kind of walked through a lot of questions people typically would have about somebody coming out to them or their own process, and would do a good job of kind of bringing some distinctions between like orientation and behavior and different things that I feel like in the general Christian culture get muddied very quickly.
Have you read Yarhouse, Ryan? I feel like I've never read a single Yarhouse book. And I remember him coming to Revoice one year and he spoke. And that was really fascinating because he put up like pie charts and graphs and things. And it was like, I think I would enjoy it, honestly, because I love stats. I love numbers. Give me data,
They've done a lot of studies, yeah.
Yeah, which is, I'm super grateful for somebody studying my very specific demographic.
Right, so niche. Right. I was like, they've done studies on people like us? What? Have they really?
Yeah, I think one of the most interesting studies, a little side note here, one of the most interesting studies they did suggested that being side B versus like side A or non-Christian is not like uniquely hazardous to mental and emotional health. And so like side B people don't actually, it would be tempting to believe, or maybe easy to believe, or your intuition might suggest that side B people tend to have higher incidences of depression, anxiety, and other negative mental health situations. But his study, at least, his research doesn't support that, which is very interesting to me.
I remember I was like so eerie that you remembered that, because I was trying to think, like, there was an aha moment when he shared at Revoice where I was like, oh my gosh, I would not have believed that. And I'm pretty sure that's exactly what it was. Of just realizing like, it's not to diminish that there are mental health struggles in our community, like there are in across humanity, but it's not as prevalent as maybe you would have thought. I was struck by that.
The grass is not in fact that much greener.
Different shades of green.
So I did actually read early on a Yarhouse book. It was maybe it was called Understanding Sexual Identity, but it was targeted toward like parents and pastors. And so it was explaining this whole gay Christian thing for your mom, or your pastor. And it was good. It was good. And he, again, takes a very social psychological kind of academic angle and uses a lot of data. Takes a very sort of objective and non-judgmental kind of I'm just going to explain to you the facts. Here's where these people are coming from. Here's what it means. Here's what it doesn't mean. Just to help you talk competently with the queer loved one in your life.
So if you love the stats, if you love the cold hard data, if you're like a 1 or a 5 or an 8 or whatever, to go back to Enneagram territory, there you go. Check out some Yarn
Careful.
And another one that's it's basically just in book form, a bunch of results from a longitudinal study. It's called Us versus Us by Andrew Marin.
Oh, I've never read Andrew's stuff either. Tell me about that.
I like it. It's been a while since I've read his original stuff. I believe he is straight and kind of just got introduced into the LGBT world because a variety of his really close friends all sort of incidentally came out to him at once.
We should try that sometime. Pick a straight guy.
Yeah, all just coordinate together.
Let's change his life forever.
Attack.
Let's turn him into a straight ally author. Let's launch a career for him.
Launch a career for the straight man.
Yes, right. He could be a famous author and petition.
White straight men, they need as much help as they can get.
Starting
a career.
Right. He did a good job though, because like the point of his newest book, and I don't really know theologically exactly where he stands. He's not necessarily, at least in what I've read by him, he's not particularly open about his particular stance. But that's not really what's important in this book. He kind of talks about like the vast majority of LGBT people, I think over 80%, grew up in the church. And when he means in the church, he's talking about like regularly attending weekly Sunday services. And the vast majority of that is in the Christian church. So kind of this idea of, these people who are the enemy were part of the church, were one of us, so to speak, as Christians. And a lot of he did a lot of questions, and I believe he coded this book in this study. But a lot of the questions are like, what would bring you back to church? And it's sort of surprising that the majority of people do not need their church to hold the same theology as them, whether they're affirming or non-affirming. That wasn't the key point, but it was more about like feeling welcome in the church at all, or like it was just safe to exist in that space. So very good. For other people, that's a little bit more recent. So a lot of the data in that is going to be maybe a little clearer and more accurate than some of the older studies.
Very nice. Yeah. I mean, I am trying to catch up. Like there's so much out there, and this is a good problem to have in 2022, the year of our Lord, that there are becoming more and more resources available about issues of sexuality and faith and gender identity now. And so much book club is helping me, you guys. Book club's helping me keep up reading things that have been on the to-do list for a while. So that's been fun to have that to keep it going. But yeah, there's just a lot out there. I wanted to bounce real quick back to you mentioned Preston Sprinkle's People to Be Loved. I often wonder how that book would be received amongst certain people if Preston himself were gay, and he has kind of a gay name, and that's the funny thing is that he's like he's totally straight, friend of the show. He's been on our show. We were so blessed to have him on our show. Preston Sprinkle. But yeah, that's like my thought of like, he writes this book and it's very well done. I recommend it for people if they want a book that explicates a really interesting like parallel is that book with Justin Lee's Torn, because there's similar explication that's happening, and there will probably be agreement on a lot of those clobber passages or a lot of the context and the way it's been mistranslated, or Christians in the 21st century like assuming that the Bible says this when maybe it's not as clear, or there's more gray language. I think Preston in his book does a better job of maybe like looking at the whole scope of scripture and kind of seeing the general themes and general patterns and what is marriage for and the family unit and all that stuff. So it's an interesting like parallel journey if you read those books like back to back. where it explicates a lot of the same passages, and the authors arrive at different conclusions, and Justin is gay, but Preston isn't. And so, there's pros and cons to all of those when you're reading those stories. But I definitely recommend it for if you just want a better grasp, I guess, of scripture. And he does a great job of incorporating stories like you said, Aaron. Staying with book club, I wanted to give a shout out to this resource that one of our yobbers recommended. And it's another book club entry that we've done in the last year. It's Redeeming Sex by Deborah Hirsch. And Ryan, were you there for that book club? I think you were, right?
I was.
You've been there for most of them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And here's what he describes it as. I love the yobbers. They're so detail oriented now. Not that they weren't before, but they follow my instructions so clearly. I was like, give me the title, give me the author, give me a synopsis, and then give me how did it hit you? Why are you recommending it? So he describes this book as a personal memoir / practice exploration of sexuality as it should be viewed by a Christian. And he describes it as this. Deborah Hirsch was the first person I ever heard talk or write publicly about sex with such freedom, respect, and awe. She helped me remove the purity culture lens that had skewed my vision around sex to see that even as a celibate gay man, I could not only talk about sex, but love sex for what it represented and engage in conversations with my peers around what used to be a taboo subject. And that's so cool because it's not explicitly any sort of a, side B resource, but it's just zooming out a little bit to talk about sex in general, which I definitely was raised in a culture that it was taboo. I don't know. I feel like it's a common refrain, unfortunately, that it wasn't really talked about where I grew up. So that's cool that he found this resource that meant a lot to him and still does to this day, for him to recommend it on this show.
Yeah, I loved that book. I have some quibbles with it. If you want to know, you can ask me. But in general, I really appreciated the way that she had sort of this expansive imagination for all the good that our sexualities can accomplish in the world. And it helped me to kind of break out of this idea that my sexuality is this sort of dangerous, toxic thing that can only harm things that it touches. Yeah. And it's just a liability to me. It helped me to sort of reconceptualize my sexuality as something that that can be good, can be beautiful, can bring life and beauty into the world. If and she talks about how it can be. I feel like she talks about how it can be sort of cultivated in that direction.
And we've been naming so many men up until now. So shout out to the ladies getting some representation with Redeeming Sex. Eve Tushnet, we haven't even thought about her yet.
I know. I love her writing
excellent.
So much.
And her messages, when she's spoken at Revoice.
Have either of you read her newest book, Tenderness?
No, I keep hearing all about it.
I know. It's on my short list.
It's all the rage in the side B sphere. This little world that we're in.
I have 5 or 6. The last Revoice I bought a bunch of the new releases that were from a lot of my favorite authors.
Look at you, such a fanboy.
I am, except they're all sitting there on Red still. It's I've hit this point because ironically, the idea when I was young of Googling for resources never crossed my mind. I don't know how.
You're more of a Bing guy.
Yeah. No, I was not a Bing guy at all.
You had Google hair, now you have Bing hair. Sorry.
Ooh. That hurts, Ryan. But yeah, so I've read a lot of the books over the years and they're excellent. But I hit a point where I just had reached capacity for a while. I think I might still be there, but I do like to read everything that comes out just to keep the beat on things, hear the new thoughts. And that was easy when there was one every 2 years about side B stuff. And the blessing of where we're at now is there's a lot of new content, which is great, but hard to keep up with.
You mentioned Revoice, which we have to mention as a resource. It is a resource that is available. It's not a book, but it is a nonprofit organization, and they hold these yearly conferences, which we've been to most of them. all of
I've
us.
been to all of them.
Yeah.
None of us will be at this one. Is
Look
that
at
going to be the
that.
first time for all of us to not be there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to miss it.
Did you guys do the virtual one when we had the pandemic? Did you do that whole thing?
We did.
I
Aaron
did,
and
yeah.
I did it together.
Oh, yeah, we
I
did.
flew up to Minnesota to
Oh,
the
fun.
folksy tundra and
Yeah.
did it with Aaron
Okay.
and Joseph.
You know,
Yeah.
I guess I technically did it, but I feel sort of untruthful saying that because I listened to Gregory Cole's, friend of the show. I listened to his one thing and that was it. He had like one workshop, which was really good actually. It was with Rachel Gilson. And they were talking about how he identifies as gay, but she kind of prefers more of an SSA identifier as a former lesbian who is now married to a man. And so she just talked about her preference for language. And it was they were so like convivial. Is that a word? Where I think that's a word, right? They were just
totally.
they were so agreeable and funny and just like clearly this wasn't contentious. Like they kind of both understood why the other was using the language that they did and still also advocating for their choice. And it was just so great. Like if there was going to be one virtual Revoice session for me to catch that year, I'm glad it was that one. But Revoice, it's definitely worth checking out. If you guys are listening, anyone listening, and you've never been to a Revoice conference, go to their website. And we'll put links to all of these resources, by the way, if that's not clear. Links in the episode and in the notes so you can click away as you're listening to these. If any of these catch your ear, you want to learn more. I always, when I tell people and when they ask questions about Revoice, like, should I go? Should I apply? My answer is like, I think you should at least go once. Yeah, absolutely. Go once. Mm-hmm. And it may not be for you. Like in general, I would say conferences are not necessarily my thing anymore. Like it kind of used to be new and exciting and like fancy to like wear the little name badge and go down the hallways and find the room where the thing is happening. Like that used to be kind of really new and exciting for me. And I guess maybe I'm just becoming old and crotchety and it's not as exciting anymore. But if you've never experienced that life, if you've never experienced that world and just being in a presence with hundreds of people, walking a similar road as you, I think it's absolutely worth checking out.
Yeah. And I would say treat it as a buffet of new ideas,
Right. You may not agree with everything, but it's still valuable and it's different ideas.
Yeah. You're going to find some stuff you eat right up though. And it's going to be great to discover some new ideas that are exciting and life-giving.
Yeah. No, it is cool. It is cool to have so many voices in one place. And it's cool because I think this episode's probably coming out after Revoice has already happened. I was joking with the guys before we started recording. I have no idea when this episode's coming out because we're kind of recording it a little bit in advance, but it's around the same time as Revoice if it hasn't already happened. And so I'm eager to hear about it. The fact that none of us are going there is kind of funny to me though, because I think I've seen you guys at all of them. The pandemic year notwithstanding, I think I saw you guys at all the other ones from St. Louis to Dallas. And
I'm going to try to do it virtually this year, but I just can't travel to Dallas.
Yeah. I gave myself permission. I was like, I always feel this like responsibility that I have to network and connect and be there, which isn't a bad thing. I say it like, oh, I gotta meet our community that goes to these conferences or it's been so special. Like, honestly, shout out to anyone like coming up to me, or if you've come up to Ryan, or if you come up to Aaron or anybody else that's like been on our podcast or blogs for us. Like I've heard stories where it's just like some beautiful encounters have happened where I was just like sitting there minding my own business, journaling or something. And somebody starts like, I can see it out of the corner of my eye. Like somebody's just like beelining toward me and I have no idea who it is, but they've like listened to our podcast or they read our blog. And it's just such a special opportunity to see all of those people in one place. And you literally wake up in the morning having no idea like who you're going to interact with that day or who you're going to sit next to in the auditorium or anything like that. And it's just, like I said, go one time. And if you hate it, send Ryan an email. No, send me an email too. CC me and tell us why you hated it. But I think there's something to gain. Like you guys said, you put it well. It's a buffet of information. You're not going to agree with everything. But there's a lot of diversity in the room, but we all unite around Jesus, and it's some just amazing times of worship and gathering together, which I am so grateful for.
I have a sort of wrap up question. I don't know if now's a good time for that.
Let's do it.
So I was curious to know what you guys would say to this. What is missing from the SciBee resource landscape? Like if you could snap your fingers and add one thing to what's out there. And it doesn't have to be like something for everyone or something all around good, but just what's missing? What gap needs to be filled?
I know exactly what I want to say, but I want to yield to Aaron and see if he has.
Oh man, and I know not at all what I want to say.
Okay. Well, if you don't, I was like, I want to be polite and let you speak, and not just
you go ahead.
So this is something we talk about it a little bit in Yob in various discussions we've had when we talked about like, I think I remember this coming up when we were talking about, we did a string of episodes about like LGBT media and LGBT media. And then we did like a spate of episodes like ConvoCast where we talked about Luca and we talked about Love Victor. We talked about a lot of specific like shows and movies that are out there and sexuality themes that are involved. And something that I just feel like is missing is just like a prominent, well-told, like engaging, dynamic movie / TV show, some sort of work that has like an explicitly SciBee person, SciBee character. Cause I can't think of what that is. Like, I don't know, maybe there's stories about monks or something, like movies about monks, which not to diminish our monk audience. We love our monks, but I don't know, just like some, you know, little Tom, little Ryan, little Aaron goes to college and wants to live out a SciBee life. And now tell me a story. What happens? And how can it be well told, authentically told, where it's not just sad and depressing? Because that's got to be part of it. There is a sadness, there is a grief, that is part of this journey, but it's not the entire part of this journey, because there's also a lot of life that we have found, you know, certainly just being in this Yob community and this greater SciBee world. But I don't know, like that to me is just something like a well-told fictional story. I think would be amazing, would be huge. Yeah.
Oh, I would be all over that. I'll share my idea and then we'll see if Aaron has thought of anything. What I would love to see is a book about, or any resource, I guess, about specifically what it's like and what it means to be embodied as a gay man. Like, you know, I think it's easy in our in our modern Christian thought to sort of separate our immaterial being, so our mind and our hearts and our sexuality, from our bodies. And I would love some sort of exploration, a memoir, a set of essays, or a more comprehensive book about just the body from lots of different angles. You know, we talk about body image, we talk about sports, we talk about nudity, we talk about masturbation, we talk about erections, we talk about self-care, we talk about, I mean, I think fashion ties into it. I think there's so much to sort of tie together about our experiences as gay men having bodies that are gay man bodies, or bisexual bodies or queer bodies in some way. I think there's so much tying together to be done to all of that I would love to see happen.
You know, that's really good, Ryan. I think maybe the Lord is putting it on your heart too.
I knew you were going to say that. I knew this was coming.
Because this is so funny to me, because I think about that too. Like, what if I'm supposed to write a screenplay for this movie that I desperately want to see so badly, you know? And it's the same thing with like creating Your Other Brothers as a resource. Like, I kept thinking like, I wish somebody would create a collaborative blog with lots of real people just telling their real stories. And why does it have to be me? Why does it have to be my friends? Why do we have to do it? And so it's like the first step, Ryan, is admitting that maybe this is something you have to take a part in. So we'll pray about that with you.
All right. Well, Aaron, what are you accidentally signing up for tonight?
Aaron, tell us your future ministry. What is it?
Oh my goodness. For real. Maybe there is something here. I feel like I like a lot of the resources that are out. I think that there is a lot, and I'm somewhat content, to be honest, with a lot of what's out there. I don't know if there's any one resource that tells me everything I want to hear, or all the things maybe I need to hear or think about. But if you go through and read dozens, then you start to pick up a lot of good stuff. What I feel like is hard is there's sort of a disconnect at this point between the resources that have been produced and like the actual Christian community around us. So I sort of still get exhausted by having to be the one to be the expert in LGBT, Q plus issues, and go to church groups or Christian ministries and help them figure out like how to actually read some of them. Like just if they could read one. Like there's been so many books I've given to family or friends who wanted to know more about like how to interact with my sexuality and stuff, and I know they never read them. So if there was a way to just take the knowledge we have and implant it into people's brains, maybe I have to become a scientist who creates some sort of technology to do that.
This reminds me of the Matrix, where you can just like plug something into your body and learn jujitsu or like whatever, and so learn everything there is to know about LGBTQ issues as a Christian. That would be helpful.
It would be nice. I guess I will take this chance to plug Posture Shift. Like I think it's another resource we didn't mention, but they do specialize in going and helping willing churches who are wanting to learn how to better minister to sexual minorities, minister to sexual minorities. So there are people out there doing that, but I just wish there were an easier way as a side B Christian for me to like sit down with a church leadership and figure out like how can they actually come and minister to us. Because like these resources we're talking about are excellent, but they're all supplemental. Like this is a day-to-day issue, and ultimately the way God designed us was to have day-to-day Christian community. And so somehow we've got to like find a way for our Christian community to come in and meet the needs that we don't even necessarily fully understand as like side B single Christian people, or married people who are married but maybe just don't feel the same connection or nuclear family ties as a lot of straight people do.
Great points.
Yeah. As you were like wrapping up, Aaron, I was like, what if there's like a thread that unites all of our ideas for future resources? So like a feature film that explores gay male body issues, and then also can be it comes with like a discussion book for church. I don't know. I was like trying to how do we piece this all together?
Maybe they'll watch a movie if they won't read a book.
Yeah. I was like, how can we piece this all together in one fell swoop? But all of those are excellent. Yeah, excellent future ideas. And like, I don't know, what if we listen to this episode or reference this episode years from now or less, to be optimistic, and any of these ideas like come to fruition? Like what would that mean? How cool would that be if we like started to speak this into existence? Like I think there's power in that of stating a desire for something, and then who knows who's listening to this from Hollywood or from the Bible Belt or from wherever to get in touch with us. Get in touch with us if you want to like explore these ideas with us. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, if you'll write the book so I don't have to, I would take you out to dinner at least.
A ghostwriter.
Just
get some ghostwriters.
A dinner with Ryan is highly recommended. I recommend such a
That's something money cannot buy.
I literally
you
can't.
Have to really
This is so great. And you guys, we're only just getting started on this resource train. I'm going to pose that same question. I'm glad you posed it, Ryan, because I'm going to ask that question with Will and Ben on our next episode and see what they have to say.
Ask the Yobbers too.
And we'll ask the Yobbers too.
Yeah.
We'll ask the Yobbers. We'll ask the general audience. Hey, audience, you heard the question. You heard the man. What side B resources would you like to see in the future? Go over to our podcast episode page, yourOtherBrothers.com/podcast. Find episode 98 or possibly 99 if you're listening to this later at a later date. Tell us in the comments, what is 1 or 2 or 3 or however many side B resources like would you like to see? What's the medium? What's the topic covered? What does the ministry do? Yeah, like tell us what's something that's on your heart, and let's just put it out there. Like this is fun to do. Like just throwing it out into the universe and just seeing who reads it or who listens to it or conversations that may come from it. I think I think something powerful might happen with that. You never know. So this has been fun to start to flesh out some of these resources. We'll be linking this episode on our resources page for future reference, where a lot of the stuff that we have on our resources page has been referenced in this episode. I'm sure we'll cover more of it in our next episode as well. So I'm excited. I'm excited to flip the cassette from side A to side B next time. Thank you, cassette tapes. Again, I don't want to I feel like this is unnecessarily confusing because we are not a side A community, but this episode is sponsored by the side A of the cassette tape as we flip the cassette tape to side B next time. Hopefully you're all tracking with me. I don't know if I lost the audience, but Ryan and Aaron, thank you so much for coming on again. It's so good to see you guys.
You too.
Always
Thanks,
a pleasure.
Tom.
It was so good to hear your stories, and it tied really well with our hair journeys to like see visions of your former selves and the men you used to be and the men you still are and the men you're becoming. Like, what a beautiful visual of the journey that we've been on here today. So thank you guys. Stay tuned, everybody. Part 2 will be coming out next time with the other guys for episode 99. And you guys know what comes after episode 99. So just saying, call that yob line. Lose that yob line virginity. That's what we're looking for. That's what we want. Or be a repeat offender and call again and again and again. You can do that too. We would love to hear from you guys. I think that's going to do it for this episode. For all your other brothers, my name is Tom.
And this is Ryan.
And I'm Aaron.
Reminding you that you are not alone. Even the sparrow finds a home. See you next time, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, friends.
Thanks for listening to Your Other Brothers podcast. Our show is edited and produced by Thomas Mark Zuniga. If you enjoy our show, consider rating and reviewing us on Apple Podcasts. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Your Other Bros. We'd love to hear your story. Comment on this or any of our episodes at yourotherbrothers.com/podcast, or share a story to play back on our show by calling us at 706-389-8009. You can also email us at podcast@yourotherbrothers.com or write to us at Your Other Brothers, P.O. Box 843, Asheville, North Carolina 28802. Finally, if you'd like to further support our storytelling, community building efforts, consider becoming a Yobber. Yobbers pledge monthly on Patreon and receive perks like bonus podcast content, access to a secret Facebook group, regular group calls with fellow patrons and authors, and more. Visit patreon.com/yourotherbros for more information. Until we journey next time, we're glad you're with us.